Hello and welcome. The skull whispers without speaking. In the deepest darkness of forgotten tombs, where even the bravest adventurers fear to tread, there floats a thing that was once a man. A yellowed cranium, no larger than your fist, adorned with gems that pulse with stolen souls. This is Acererak, the Demi-Lich, the architect of death itself. And you are about to understand how silence became the most terrible command ever spoken to the legions of the unliving. Before we descend into these forbidden histories, please consider subscribing to the channel. It is the surest way to find your path back to our library of lore when you wake. Section 1. From Mortal to Arch-lich. You need to understand that Acererak's story begins not with death, but with an existence marked by rejection and fury. The sources tell us he was born a Cambion, a half-demon, the product of an ancient conjurer who summoned a Balor named Tarnham far beyond his ability to control. The circumstances of his birth remain clouded in conflicting accounts. As is often the case with beings who have existed for millennia and who cultivate mystery as deliberately as others cultivate power, what we can piece together suggests his mother survived the birthing, though this mercy proved temporary. 10 years later, an angry mob armed with torches descended upon them, and she perished in the flames of mortal fear and hatred. The young half-demon faced his own death that night, cornered by advisors who counseled his immediate execution. In that moment of crisis, an unlikely savior appeared. Vecna himself, the Whispered One, already a lich of terrible power, intervened. He killed those who urged the child's death and took the half-demon as an apprentice. The motives behind this rescue remain subject to interpretation, though Vecna rarely acted from pure compassion. Perhaps he saw potential in the boy's demonic heritage, or recognized a kindred spirit in one already rejected by the living world. Whatever the reason, young Acererak entered the service of one of history's most infamous necromancers. And even at age 10, he loathed life itself, eagerly anticipating the day he too would transcend mortality through undeath. The apprenticeship under Vecna proved formative in ways that would echo through the centuries. You can imagine the education. Lessons in necromancy conducted over fresh corpses, the study of death magic in laboratories where screams were common background noise, and the observation of a master who had already achieved what Acererak desperately desired. The half-demon absorbed everything, his prodigious talent combining with demonic heritage to create a mind that grasped concepts beyond most mortal wizards. Yet the relationship between master and apprentice was never simple. During Vecna's siege of Fleeth, sources tell us that Acererak both betrayed and saved his master. He arranged for Vecna to be ambushed by clerics of Pellar, a deliberate act of treachery designed to gain favor and position himself closer to Vecna's most treasured secrets. Yet when the ambush nearly succeeded in destroying the Lich, Acererak rescued him from annihilation. This pattern of simultaneous loyalty and betrayal suggests a student who both revered and resented his teacher, learning from Vecna while constantly seeking to surpass him. The pursuit of lichdom became Acererak's consuming obsession once he reached sufficient maturity and magical power. The transformation from living being to undead Lich requires more than mere magical skill. It demands the creation of a phylactery to house your soul, the completion of rituals so vile that their very description risks corruption, and a fundamental rejection of life itself. For Acererak, this process involved an alliance that would later become as famous as the being himself. He turned to the worship of Orcus, demon lord of undeath, who offered him the ritual by which he could achieve lichdom. Some sources suggest Acererak was using Orcus and his worshippers merely as means to an end, that his devotion was pragmatic rather than genuine. This interpretation gains credibility from what followed. Once Acererak attained lichdom, he ceased paying homage to Orcus entirely, lending weight to the notion that his worship had never been more than a transaction, a price paid for the knowledge he required. The night of his transformation must have been carefully prepared after decades of study and accumulation of necessary components. The ritual would have required sacrifices, the consumption of poisons lethal to any living being, and the willful surrender of mortality to negative energy. Your flesh decays even as you complete the incantation. Your heart beats its final rhythm. Your lungs draw their last breath. Then, in the moment between life and death, your soul transfers to the phylactery and returns to animate your now undead corpse. You become a Lich, freed from the tyranny of time, hunger, and mortality itself. The newly transformed Acererak possessed power that dwarfed his mortal capabilities, even enhanced as they were by his demonic heritage. Time itself became meaningless. He could devote centuries to a single project without concern for aging or illness. His magic grew exponentially as he absorbed knowledge from countless sources. But lichdom for Acererak was never an end goal. Many had achieved this state before him. He needed to transcend even this elevated existence to become something unprecedented. This ambition would define every subsequent phase of his eternal existence. You should know that Acererak's early centuries as a Lich were marked by systematic conquest and accumulation. After Vecna's downfall at the hands of his betrayer Kaz, Acererak moved to establish his own domain. He claimed territory in the vast swamp, a location that would eventually house his most infamous creation. During this period, he gathered undead servants with methodical efficiency, the creation of basic undead minions becomes trivial for a lich of sufficient power. Through the animate dead spell and more potent rituals, Acererak raised armies of skeletons and zombies. These mindless servitors formed the foundation of his growing power, performing simple tasks, guarding strongholds, and serving as expendable troops in conflicts with rival necromancers. The creation of more sophisticated undead required correspondingly greater effort and expertise. Wights, wraiths, and mummies each demand specific conditions and rituals. Acererak mastered these processes, building a hierarchy of undead servants that could execute complex commands and operate with varying degrees of autonomy. Each type served a purpose in his organization, and each answered to his will with absolute obedience. This period of experimentation and refinement taught him the principles of undead command that would later find their ultimate expression in his Demi-Lich form. The establishment of strongholds and laboratories marked Acererak's transition from wandering necromancer to Dark Lord with territorial ambitions. He claimed ancient ruins, conquered rival undead overlords, and established domains where the living feared to tread. These territories served as workshops for experiments too elaborate or dangerous for simple hidden lairs. Within sprawling complexes of stone corridors and shadowed chambers, Acererak conducted the research that would eventually lead to insights no other necromancer had achieved. He studied death itself, not merely as a state to be inflicted or avoided, but as a fundamental force to be understood at the deepest level. The gathering of magical knowledge consumed much of his attention during these centuries. His agents stole spellbooks, excavated ancient tombs to retrieve lost rituals, and infiltrated centers of learning to copy guarded secrets. Acererak himself ventured into dimensions that would destroy lesser beings. The negative energy plane where existence itself drains away. The Shadowfell where darkness takes physical form, and stranger realms where reality follows alien rules. Each expedition added to his understanding of death, undeath, and the energies that animate the unliving. This accumulated knowledge would prove essential for the transformation he planned. The study of powerful artifacts became another focus. Acererak recognized that certain objects could amplify abilities beyond what even a lich could achieve through personal power alone. He sought weapons forged in the first age of worlds, staves channeling forces beyond mortal comprehension, and relics that once belonged to beings of godlike might. Many such artifacts were guarded by powerful entities or hidden in trap-laden dungeons. Acererak overcame these obstacles through overwhelming force, careful planning, or, when necessary, surprising cunning. A lich possesses the luxury of patience. If direct assault would prove too costly, He could spend decades carefully positioning assets before making his move. The experiments on living subjects provided crucial data for his deepest research. He captured adventurers, travelers, and even fellow spellcasters, subjecting them to procedures that mapped the boundaries between life and death. How long could a soul remain tethered to a dying body? What happens when you drain life energy at different rates? Can consciousness persist when severed from its physical anchor? These questions and thousands more drove investigations that any moral being would find abhorrent. The knowledge gained, however terrible the means of acquisition, yielded insights that no other necromancer had achieved. He learned to perceive the moment of death with perfect clarity, to understand the mechanics of soul separation, and to manipulate the transition between states of existence. The creation of unique undead servants showcased his growing mastery. Rather than relying solely on standard types, he began crafting specialized creatures tailored to specific purposes. Skeletal warriors with multiple arms wielding enchanted weapons, animated corpses of powerful monsters combining natural abilities with undead resilience, ghosts bound to objects, creating haunted items that could spy or strike at his enemies. Each creation represented an innovation in necromantic technique, and each added to his growing reputation among those who trafficked in dark magic. The relationships with other liches and powerful necromancers during this period remained pragmatic and often treacherous. Acererak sometimes formed alliances of convenience, trading knowledge or coordinating actions against mutual enemies. But trust never factored into these arrangements. He betrayed allies when advantageous and eliminated rivals who grew too powerful or too curious. His reputation as both a formidable potential ally and a dangerous adversary spread throughout networks of undead overlords, a reputation that would serve him well in future schemes. The accumulation of wealth became necessary not for any personal pleasure, but as a tool for acquiring resources. Acererak's vaults filled with gold, gems, magical components, and items of artistic or historical value. This wealth purchased information, bribed corrupt officials in living societies, and funded expeditions to retrieve rare materials. Every coin, every jeweled artifact, every magical implement represented another transaction that advanced his ultimate design. The treasure hoards that would later fill his tomb came from these centuries of systematic accumulation. The confrontation with would-be heroes became inevitable as his power and territory expanded. Adventurers seeking glory, paladins pursuing righteousness, and wizards testing their might ventured into his domains. Most died quickly, overwhelmed by undead hordes or lethal traps. Some proved more formidable, forcing Acererak to confront them personally. These battles provided valuable intelligence about living tactics, magical defenses, and the limits of mortal determination. More importantly, they gave him insight into the heroic mindset, knowledge he would later exploit when designing the ultimate death trap. The preparation for his ultimate transformation began to take concrete form as his power reached heights that rivaled archmages and challenged even some lesser deities. His magical abilities could devastate armies. His undead legions could conquer kingdoms. His accumulated knowledge filled entire libraries. Yet satisfaction eluded him. The transition from Lich to Demi-Lich beckoned, promising power and security beyond anything he had yet achieved. This transformation would require more than research and personal power. It would demand the construction of an elaborate and deadly dungeon, a place where he could rest in his transformed state while accumulating souls to fuel his continued existence. The conception of the Tomb of Horrors began to take shape in his ancient, calculating mind. The decades preceding construction were spent in meticulous planning. Acererak needed to ensure his transition to Demi-Lich would not leave him vulnerable during the process or afterward. He established contingency plans, considered hiding multiple phylacteries, and created fail-safes to guarantee survival, even if the transformation proved more difficult than anticipated. He spread false information about his intentions, creating rumors that would mislead potential enemies. He eliminated those who had learned too much about his true plans, ensuring that when the tomb finally rose from the swamp, its secrets would be his alone. Section 2. Creating the Tomb of Horrors. The selection of the tomb's location demanded more than strategic thinking. Acererak required a place remote enough to discourage casual exploration, yet accessible enough to attract the ambitious and the foolhardy. He chose a site deep within the vast swamp, that treacherous expanse south of the county of Sundi in the world of Oerth. The swamp itself teemed with dangers. Lizard folk tribes, bog creatures, and natural hazards that claimed lives long before anyone reached the tomb proper. This natural barrier served as the first filter, ensuring that only determined parties would even locate the entrance. The site possessed additional advantages as well. The boundaries between planes grew thin in certain areas of the swamp, allowing easier access to negative energy. The sodden ground and twisted vegetation created natural concealment, and the region's reputation for death kept most travelers far away. You need to appreciate that the Tomb of Horrors was never intended as a dwelling or treasure vault in any conventional sense. Every chamber, every corridor, every seemingly innocuous decoration served Acererak's ultimate purpose: to test, to torment, and to kill. The tomb would function as a filter separating the weak from the strong, the foolish from the clever, and ultimately providing the Demi-Lich with a steady supply of souls to fuel his transformed existence. The architecture itself became a weapon as deadly as any spell. Acererak spent years designing the layout, sketching variations, testing trap mechanisms, and refining every detail until the structure achieved a terrible perfection that would become legendary. The construction phase required resources on a staggering scale and consumed 80 years of continuous labor. Acererak commanded armies of undead workers who toiled without rest, carving chambers from solid stone and assembling components for the elaborate mechanisms that would later kill countless intruders. He imported rare materials, adamantine for walls that could not be breached, obsidian infused with negative energy, and stones that naturally suppressed certain types of magic. Living craftsmen with specialized skills were captured when their expertise exceeded what undead laborers could provide. These unfortunate souls created specific components requiring fine work or artistic sensibility, then were executed to preserve secrecy. Their corpses joined the undead workforce, ensuring that no living being except Acererak understood the complete design. Upon the tomb's completion, he had all remaining slaves killed, leaving no witnesses to its construction. The entrance to the tomb presents the first test for those who dare disturb Acererak's rest. 2 false entrances exist, designed to waste time and resources while concealing the true path forward. When explorers finally locate the correct approach, they encounter a hillside where the facade of the tomb emerges. A monstrous face, described in accounts as either demonic or devilish in aspect, with an open mouth forming a passage into darkness. This darkness is not natural shadow, but something deeper, a void that seems to swallow light and sound. Some sources suggest this effect comes from magical darkness, while the nature of what creates such absolute blackness could imply manipulation of the boundary between the material plane and places where light itself cannot exist. Torches gutter and die, spells creating illumination falter or fail entirely. You enter blind, unable to see companions or the path ahead. This immediate sensory deprivation serves a deliberate psychological purpose. Adventurers accustomed to preparation and methodical exploration find themselves stumbling forward in complete darkness, their confidence eroding before encountering any physical danger. The disorientation makes even simple navigation treacherous. Some groups turn back at this threshold, recognizing that what lies ahead promises only death. Those who continue demonstrate the determination Acererak seeks, the quality that marks them as worthy victims, whose souls will possess greater power when trapped. The initial chambers beyond the entrance offer false hope through apparent simplicity. You find corridors decorated with frescoes and mosaics depicting scenes that seem to tell stories about the tomb's creator. These images mix truth with deliberate lies, designed to mislead anyone attempting to understand Acererak's nature or anticipate his defenses. The branching paths present choices that appear meaningful, but often lead to similar outcomes. Acererak understood that adventurers expect dungeons to follow certain patterns learned through experience. Treasure rooms should be guarded. Important areas should be difficult to reach. Secret doors should reward clever searching. The Tomb of Horrors systematically subverts these expectations, punishing those who rely on conventional dungeon-delving wisdom. One corridor features a green devil face, its mouth agape in a black opening large enough for a person to enter. The entire image radiates evil and magic to those who can detect such things. The mouth opening functions as a sphere of annihilation, a phenomenon that completely destroys anything passing through it. No saving throw, no chance for survival, simply erasure from existence. The original accounts make clear that this trap offers no mercy. Anyone who passes through the opening is utterly destroyed with no possibility of resistance. This represents one of Acererak's core design philosophies. Some locations within the tomb guarantee death to anyone foolish enough to trigger them, serving as brutal reminders that the tomb does not play by rules adventurers consider fair. The false tomb represents one of Acererak's most elaborate and cruel deceptions. After navigating trapped corridors and overcoming apparent guardians, explorers discover what appears to be their ultimate goal: a crypt containing a sarcophagus resting on a dais. Treasure and magical items surround it. A broken gargoyle statue, tall and imposing even in its damaged state, hints at ancient guardians. The entire scene projects authenticity, complete with auras of powerful magic. Groups reaching this point often congratulate themselves on surviving the tomb's dangers. The sarcophagus bears inscriptions, suggesting it contains Acererak's remains, and the visible treasure appears to validate the rumors that brought adventurers to this deadly place. The trap springs when someone opens the sarcophagus or attempts to claim certain pieces of treasure. Based on the known design, the consequences vary, but uniformly prove lethal to the unprepared. Some accounts mention poison gas flooding the chamber. Others describe the activation of hidden mechanisms or the release of undead that had waited in concealment. A gargoyle crown mentioned in the original descriptions could itself be trapped or cursed. Few escape this false crypt, and those who do often lack the strength to continue deeper. More importantly, this elaborate deception serves purposes beyond simply killing intruders. The false tomb provides Acererak with a useful reputation. Survivors who escape spread tales of their narrow victory, embellishing their triumph over the legendary Lich. These stories attract more adventurers, feeding a cycle that brings a steady stream of victims. Each new group believes they can succeed where others failed, never realizing that those who claimed victory never reached the true depths. This psychological warfare demonstrates Acererak's understanding of mortal pride. Heroes need villains they can potentially defeat, and the false tomb creates the illusion that Acererak is dangerous, but ultimately mortal in his vulnerability. The architecture throughout the tomb's many chambers demonstrates principles of deception refined over the 80 years of construction. Corridors that should run straight inexplicably angle in ways that defy spatial logic, suggesting that portions of the tomb exist in dimensional pockets separate from normal space. Doors appearing to lead forward actually transport those who pass through them to chambers they previously visited, creating navigation loops that can trap parties in endless circuits. Ceilings are higher or lower than they appear, concealing gaps where creatures lurk. Floors consist of carefully balanced stone slabs that shift or collapse when weight distributes incorrectly. Every architectural element serves to confuse, mislead, or kill. The incorporation of traps showcases not just mechanical ingenuity, but intimate understanding of how adventurers think. Simple physical traps like pitfalls appear in the outer areas, conditioning explorers to expect dangers they can detect through careful searching. Once this pattern establishes itself, Acererak introduces magical traps operating according to different rules. A corridor tested and found safe might be perfectly harmless the first 3 times you traverse it, only to trigger devastating effects on the 4th passage. Treasure chests might be entirely untrapped, but cursed so that anyone viewing the contents becomes compelled to destructive behaviors. These conditional, evolving dangers punish the development of any predictable search routine. The use of teleportation traps creates additional layers of confusion and separates groups. You might open a door and step through, only to materialize in a distant chamber with no obvious return path. Companions following seconds behind end up in entirely different locations. The original design includes multiple such teleportation points, including an archway of mist that requires touching colored stones in a specific sequence. Choosing incorrectly deposits you into a deep shaft called the Forsaken Prison, where you plummet and take massive damage. At the bottom, pulling levers leads to additional shafts beneath the first, creating layers of trap within trap. This separation of parties leaves individuals facing dangers designed for groups, and the psychological terror of sudden isolation often proves as deadly as physical threats. The creature guardians placed throughout demonstrate mastery over various undead forms and strategic placement, rather than relying solely on skeletons and zombies. The tomb houses creatures selected for maximum effectiveness in their assigned locations. Accounts mention gargoyles, both as statuary and potentially as actual guardians. The maintenance of the tomb allegedly involves ethereal demons who replace destroyed guardians and reset traps, though whether Acererak employed actual demons, or whether this refers to specific undead types, remains a subject of scholarly interpretation. What we know with certainty is that the tomb remained functional long after its construction, suggesting either automated maintenance systems or servants who continued their duties across centuries. The magical infrastructure underlying the entire structure required enchantments of extraordinary complexity and permanence. Acererak wove spells into the very stone, creating effects designed to persist for millennia without maintenance. He established wards preventing certain types of divination, making it impossible to scout the layout through scrying. Anti-magic zones in strategic locations force even powerful spellcasters to rely on mundane equipment and physical capabilities, precisely where Acererak's mechanical traps prove most lethal. The darkness at the entrance, the preservation of the structure despite being built in a swamp, and the continued functionality of traps after centuries all point to permanent magical effects woven into the tomb's fundamental construction. The false trails and misleading clues scattered throughout demonstrate a cruel sense of humor. Inscriptions offer hints about safe passage, but following these directions leads to deadlier traps. Murals might depict supposed weaknesses, encouraging preparation of specific countermeasures that prove useless. Maps carved into walls show layouts that are deliberately incorrect. These elements add psychological torture to physical danger, as adventurers begin questioning whether any information they gather can be trusted. The inclusion of actual treasure throughout validates the premise that this is indeed a tomb worth plundering. The treasure serves as bait, encouraging adventurers to take actions that trigger mechanisms. Some valuable items are cursed or trapped in ways that make them more dangerous than beneficial. Acererak understood that greed proves more reliable than any mechanical trigger. A warrior might carefully check a door for traps, but seeing a jeweled weapon lying unguarded often overwhelms caution. The deeper chambers transition from elaborate death traps to environments of pure hostility. Based on descriptions of the tomb's nature, the architecture becomes more alien in its deepest sections, with dimensions that seem wrong. Acererak incorporated elements from the negative energy plane, creating zones where life itself faces active suppression. Simply existing in these areas drains vitality. The few creatures inhabiting these depths are aberrations adapted to feed on life energy, viewing living beings purely as sustenance. The crypt of the Demi-Lich itself occupies a chamber that cannot be reached by simply following corridors. The original module makes clear that finding Acererak's true resting place requires solving puzzles and navigating through the tomb's many deceptions. Even locating the correct area requires knowledge that most groups never acquire. This final barrier ensures that only those with exceptional resources and determination can hope to confront the Demi-Lich, though such confrontations almost invariably prove fatal. The true form of Acererak's consciousness rests within his skull, a yellowed piece of bone adorned with gems that pulse with evil inner light. Each gem contains a trapped soul, serving as both phylactery and power source. The skull hovers in its final chamber, surrounded by the last and most powerful defenses. The chamber's layout, according to the original design, places the skull where it becomes the ultimate prize or the ultimate threat, depending on how foolish the discoverers prove to be. The early challengers who ventured into the Tomb of Horrors left records speaking to legendary lethality. Entire adventuring companies entered and vanished without trace. Solo heroes survived only long enough to trigger initial traps. Powerful wizards attempting to bypass defenses through teleportation or ethereal travel discovered that Acererak had anticipated these approaches. Even groups backed by divine intervention found their blessings insufficient against the concentrated malevolence built into every stone. The few survivors who escaped the outer regions became living warnings. They returned to civilization broken in body and spirit, speaking of horrors that defied description and traps that violated every principle they thought governed dungeon design. These survivors inadvertently served Acererak's purposes by spreading fear and fascination. Their stories elevated the tomb to mythical status, ensuring that new generations of adventurers would seek it out, driven by the impulse to test themselves against the ultimate challenge. Each new group brought fresh souls for trapping, feeding power, and extending influence across centuries. The tomb's construction took 80 years, but its legacy spans far longer. Acererak created more than a death trap. He built a legend, a focal point for mortal ambition and folly. The tomb functions as a beacon, drawing the brave and the foolish to their doom. In this way, the architecture demonstrates that the most effective weapon against the living comes not from direct confrontation, but from manipulation of their desires for glory and treasure. The structure speaks to mortal weakness more eloquently than any voice, and it does so in complete silence, just as its creator would eventually command his legions. Section 3. the Demi-Lich Transformation. The decision to abandon physical form came from a place of both ambition and calculated evolution. Acererak had achieved everything a lich could accomplish. His magical power rivaled demigods. His undead armies controlled vast territories. His accumulated knowledge filled libraries. Yet the lich form imposed limitations. The phylactery, no matter how well hidden, remained a vulnerability. The physical body, though undead, still required maintenance and could be damaged. More significantly, existence as a lich bound him to relatively fixed locations. The Demi-Lich state promised freedom from these constraints, an existence of expanded consciousness that could persist across dimensions simultaneously, while the physical form reduced to its most essential components. You need to understand that transformation from lich to demi-lich represents neither natural progression nor common evolution. Most liches never achieve this state. The transformation can occur through two paths, and the distinction between them matters greatly. Some liches become demi-liches through neglect, allowing their physical forms to decay because they spent too long in astral projection without feeding souls to their phylacteries. These accidental demi-liches can revert to full lich form by feeding a single soul to their phylactery. But Acererak pursued a different path entirely. He sought to become a demi-lich deliberately, viewing it not as degradation, but as dark evolution beyond what other liches achieved. The preparation required understanding principles that most necromancers never grasp. A lich who wishes to intentionally become a demi-lich must learn the art of creating soul gems, objects of extraordinary magical potency that function differently from traditional phylacteries. These gems would serve multiple purposes, housing fragments of consciousness, acting as backup phylacteries, and most importantly, providing the mechanism to trap the souls of others. Creating even a single soul gem demands years of research, gathering rare resources, and extensive experimentation. Acererak needed to craft 8 such gems, each one requiring materials of flawless quality and months of enchantment work. The soul gems themselves are fashioned from stones of exceptional clarity and magical resonance. Sources describe them as egg-shaped gems of wondrous quality, though the exact materials vary. What remains consistent across accounts is that these gems must be incorporated directly into the lich's physical form. Most commonly, they replace the teeth and become jeweled eyes set in the skull's sockets. Some liches set them in joints between vertebrae or replace knuckles in hands, forming faceted jeweled claws. Acererak chose to place his gems in his skull, creating the image that would define him. A cranium adorned with pulsing jewels that gleam with captured souls. The process of transformation begins not with ritual, but with decision. Acererak needed to willingly cease, maintaining the soul energy necessary to retain his physical state. For a lich, the body persists through constant infusion of negative energy and periodic consumption of souls. By deliberately withholding this sustenance, the physical form begins to decay. But unlike a lich who neglects their body accidentally, Acererak prepared for this degradation. He had already embedded the soul gems into his skull, establishing them as anchors for his consciousness. As his flesh fell away and his bones crumbled to dust, these gems preserved what mattered: his awareness, his power, and his ability to act. The dissolution of the physical body occurs gradually rather than instantaneously. Your flesh, already desiccated by centuries of lichdom, deteriorates first. Then the bones begin crumbling, starting with the extremities and working inward. Eventually, only the skull remains, hovering in place through force of will and magical momentum. This skull becomes the Demi-Lich's physical anchor, though calling it physical oversimplifies what it represents. The skull exists partially outside normal physical laws, sustained by the soul gems embedded within it, and by the Demi-Lich's connection to negative energy itself. Acererak enhanced this transformation through his use of astral projection. Rather than remaining tethered to his degrading body, he projected his consciousness outward, exploring the multiverse through his astral form. This allowed him to maintain full access to his powers and knowledge even as his physical body reduced to skull and dust. The astral projection meant his consciousness could operate at full capacity in distant locations, while his skull rested in the tomb's deepest chamber. This split existence, simultaneously present in astral form elsewhere and physically manifested as a skull, gave him capabilities that exceeded even those of traditional Demi-Liches. The nature of consciousness in this transformed state differs fundamentally from mortal or even lich awareness. The 8 soul gems function as distributed repositories of your sense of self. Each gem contains enough of your core identity to regenerate the whole if the skull is destroyed. This creates a form of existence where you are simultaneously one being and multiple backups, a single consciousness distributed across multiple phylacteries. The gems allow the Demi-Lich to remain mentally and physically functional in ways that would be impossible if they relied solely on a traditional phylactery. They prevent the decay of consciousness that would otherwise accompany the loss of physical form. The connection to negative energy grows profoundly stronger in the Demi-Lich state. As a lich, Acererak drew upon this energy to fuel magic and sustain existence. As a Demi-Lich, the relationship deepens into something approaching symbiosis. He becomes a conduit for negative energy, channeling it directly from its source. This connection grants near-limitless magical power, as he no longer needs to prepare spells in traditional fashion. Instead, he shapes negative energy directly into desired effects, limited only by will and knowledge. The constant influx makes the Demi-Lich effectively immortal, even by undead standards. Destroying the skull merely forces consciousness to retreat to soul gems, from which regeneration occurs within 1 to 10 days. The soul-trapping ability represents the Demi-Lich's most terrifying power. The mechanics operate with brutal simplicity. The Demi-Lich focuses on a living being within range of its perception, typically within 300 feet. The target must resist through sheer force of personality and life force. Those who fail find their soul instantly drawn from their body and imprisoned within one of the gems. The process occurs faster than any spell, giving victims no opportunity for defense beyond that initial moment of resistance. The body collapses, corrupting and moldering to dust within moments. The soul remains trapped in the gem, aware but powerless, slowly being consumed over the next 24 hours. You must understand the horror of this ability from the victim's perspective. One moment, you stand facing a floating skull adorned with pulsing gems. The next, you feel something fundamental being pulled from your body, an extraction that goes beyond pain into existential violation. Your consciousness compresses as it's drawn into the gem, and then you find yourself trapped in crystalline prison, able to perceive but unable to act. You watch as your body decays to nothing. You feel the Demi-Lich's presence beginning to consume your essence. Unless someone destroys the gem within 24 hours, your soul ceases to exist entirely, devoured to fuel powers beyond your comprehension. The silence that defines the Demi-Lich's command over undead emerges naturally from this transformed state. Acererak no longer possesses vocal cords, lungs, or any mechanism for conventional speech. He cannot issue verbal orders or engage in spoken conversation. Yet this silence proves more powerful than any voice could be. His connection to negative energy and his nature as a consciousness distributed across soul gems allow him to project intent directly. The command Undead spell, as traditionally practiced, requires that the undead hear spoken orders. But Acererak's method transcends this limitation. His commands flow through the fundamental connection all undead share with negative energy, arriving not as sound, but as compulsion. The mechanism operates through channels that exist beneath conscious perception. When Acererak creates or binds an undead creature to his service, he establishes a link through the very energy animating them. This link remains mostly dormant, allowing the servant to operate independently. When he wishes to issue a command, he sends directed negative energy along this connection, carrying pure intent directly into the creature's consciousness. The order arrives not as words, but as concepts that bypass language entirely. An undead warrior receives not an instruction to attack, but an overwhelming compulsion to engage specific targets, complete with tactical information and strategic priorities already integrated into the imperative. This form of communication proves far more efficient than verbal orders and remains immune to interception or misunderstanding. There is no message to intercept, no words to mishear, no language barrier to overcome. The command simply appears in the servant's awareness, as if it originated from within their own thinking. For intelligent undead, this creates the illusion of autonomous decision-making. They believe they are choosing their actions, when in reality, every choice aligns perfectly with Acererak's will. For mindless undead, the distinction matters less, but even they respond more efficiently to direction that arrives as pure impulse rather than interpreted speech. The projection of commands across vast distances represents another advantage of the Demi-Lich's nature. Acererak's consciousness, distributed across soul gems and connected to negative energy, exists partially outside normal space. This could imply that he maintains contact with servants regardless of physical separation, though the exact mechanism remains a subject of scholarly interpretation. Based on what we know about his operations across multiple worlds, we can assume his control network functions even when servants operate in distant kingdoms or on other planes entirely. Commands travel along threads of negative energy that connect all undead to their animating force, unaffected by barriers that would block conventional communication. The soul gems embedded in the skull serve purposes beyond housing consciousness fragments. Each gem containing a trapped soul becomes a reservoir of life energy the Demi-Lich can draw upon. When Acererak needs to fuel particularly powerful magic or regenerate damage to his form, he consumes a trapped soul, converting stored life force into usable power. This makes the Demi-Lich self-sustaining in ways even a lich cannot match. Where a lich might need regular harvesting of fresh victims, the Demi-Lich carries portable supplies of souls. Each represents a powerful individual whose essence now serves purposes they would have found abhorrent in life. The existence across multiple planes through astral projection and distributed consciousness grants perspectives that transcend mortal comprehension. Acererak's awareness no longer confines itself to single locations. Through his astral form and his connection to negative energy, he maintains presence in multiple dimensions simultaneously. A portion of his consciousness might observe events on the material plane, while another explores the Shadowfell. This multidimensional awareness allows him to perceive interactions between planes, understanding how events in one dimension ripple across others. He sees patterns invisible to beings constrained to single planes of existence. The ability to manifest through both his skull and his astral form creates strategic advantages conventional beings cannot match. If threatened in one location, he can shift focus to another instantly. He can appear to be in his tomb while simultaneously operating through his astral projection in a distant city. This makes the Demi-Lich nearly impossible to corner or trap, destroying the skull inconveniences rather than threatens him. True destruction would require finding and eliminating all soul gems plus his phylactery simultaneously, a task made nearly impossible by Acererak's habit of hiding these objects across multiple planes in locations protected by elaborate defenses. The maintenance of this state requires constant influx of souls and negative energy. While far more resilient than a lich's form, the Demi-Lich still demands sustenance. Trapped souls in the gems slowly degrade as Acererak draws upon them for power, eventually fading to nothing. This creates constant need for fresh souls, driving him to ensure steady supply of victims. The Tomb of Horrors serves this purpose admirably. Each group of adventurers venturing into its depths provides potential additions to his collection. The most powerful among them, those who penetrate deepest before falling to traps or guardians, prove especially valuable. Their souls, rich with experience and magical potential, fuel continued existence and expand already formidable power. The transformation to Demi-Lich form alters Acererak's relationship with time in subtle but significant ways. While he does not perceive time in completely alien fashion, his distributed consciousness and freedom from biological constraints allow him to pursue schemes spanning centuries with patience that living beings cannot comprehend. He can set plans in motion that will not reach fruition for generations, maintaining awareness of their progress through his various forms of perception. This temporal scope makes him almost preternaturally effective as a planner, designing schemes that account for contingencies across vast stretches of time. The psychological experience of existence as a Demi-Lich remains difficult to convey. Imagine consciousness untethered from flesh, distributed across multiple gems, simultaneously manifesting as both skull and astral projection. You perceive through gems that serve as both eyes and prisons for captured souls. You think thoughts that span dimensions. You command armies through silent impulses that travel along channels of negative energy. For anyone retaining attachment to mortal modes of thinking, this existence would be maddening. But Acererak shed such limitations long ago, first in becoming a lich, then in transcending even that state. For him, the Demi-Lich form represents achievement of existence, limited only by the scope of his ambition. The influence of this transformation extends to how he commands not just undead, but the flow of negative energy in his vicinity. In Demi-Lich form, he does not simply use negative energy as a tool. He becomes an extension of it, a focal point through which the negative energy plane expresses its nature in other dimensions. This grants abilities transcending traditional necromancy. He can create zones where negative energy dominates, transforming areas into death traps that drain life from any living presence. He can sense disturbances in negative energies flow across distances, alerting him to destruction of servants or activities of rival necromancers. The question remains, how does this silent, distributed consciousness command and coordinate vast legions of undead serving his will? The organization and control mechanisms allowing a single skull to direct armies across multiple worlds represent the true genius of his design, the culmination of centuries spent mastering both necromancy and the nature of command itself. Section 4. Undead Hierarchies and Control. The organization of Acererak's undead forces follows principles borrowed from military structures, proven effective across countless civilizations. At the foundation exist the mindless undead, the skeletal warriors, and shambling zombies requiring constant direction and capable of executing only the simplest commands. These creatures form the bulk of any necromancer's forces, numbering in the hundreds or thousands, depending on the scope of operations. Their value lies not in individual capability, but in overwhelming numbers and tireless persistence. A skeleton cannot grow tired, question orders, or retreat from fear. It continues fighting until physically destroyed. This makes mindless undead ideal for garrison duties, patrol routes, and serving as the first wave in military engagements. You must understand that even mindless undead require structure to function effectively. Acererak cannot personally direct every skeleton and zombie under his control, as the mental effort required to micromanage thousands of simple servants would consume even his enhanced consciousness. Instead, he establishes chains of command where more intelligent undead supervise and direct the mindless ones. A wight might oversee a company of 50 skeletons, relaying Acererak's general intent and adapting it to specific tactical situations. This wight receives its instructions directly from the Demi-Lich through the silent command network, experiencing them as overwhelming compulsions that include not just immediate orders, but strategic context and long-term objectives. The creation and deployment of basic undead forces operates with methodical efficiency. The animate dead spell available to necromancers of sufficient power, creates skeletons or zombies that remain under the caster's control. However, maintaining control requires recasting the spell every 24 hours for most practitioners. A lich or demi-lich of Acererak's power transcends these limitations. His connection to negative energy and his mastery of necromancy allow him to maintain control over undead indefinitely once they are bound to his service. This creates permanent armies that require no daily maintenance, freeing his attention for more complex schemes. The intermediate tier of the hierarchy consists of undead retaining significant intelligence and capable of operating with genuine autonomy. Wights form the backbone of this tier, serving as officers and commanders for lesser undead. Each wight possesses the memories and skills from life, making them capable of complex tactical thinking and adaptive responses. A wight that commanded soldiers in life continues to understand battlefield strategy in Undeath. One that was a skilled craftsman can supervise construction or maintenance of equipment. Acererak deliberately selects which corpses become wights, choosing individuals whose life experience proves useful. The trapmaker Gora, whose designs particularly pleased Acererak during the tomb's construction, was rewarded with transformation into a wight, allowing his expertise to continue serving even after death. Wights possess capabilities making them valuable beyond simple command functions. They can drain life energy through touch, weakening living opponents, while simultaneously creating spawn from humanoid victims. This ability to reproduce their kind without requiring Acererak's direct intervention makes wights strategically valuable. A single wight infiltrating an area can gradually build a force of spawn, expanding the Demi-Lich's influence without requiring his personal attention. Their resistance to non-magical weapons and immunity to exhaustion and poison make them difficult to eliminate without specialized equipment or magic. Wraiths occupy a similar tier, but serve entirely different purposes within the organization. Their incorporeal nature makes them ideal for reconnaissance, assassination, and operations requiring infiltration. A wraith passes through solid walls, rendering conventional defenses meaningless. They observe enemy positions without detection by most forms of perception. When attacking, their life drain touches victims from within, bypassing armor and physical protection entirely. Wraiths can create specters from those they kill, allowing them to grow their numbers during operations. Their flying speed of 60 feet per turn makes them extraordinarily mobile, able to strike and withdraw before defenders can respond effectively. The creation of vampires represents a significant investment, as these undead require more than simple necromantic animation. True vampires possess power rivaling many living spellcasters and warriors. They retain full intelligence, gain superhuman physical capabilities, and acquire supernatural powers, including shapeshifting, domination of mortal minds, and creation of vampire spawn from victims. Based on what we know of Acererak's operations, we can assume he uses vampires sparingly, placing them in positions where their combination of power and intelligence proves most valuable. A vampire might rule a city as his proxy, maintaining the illusion of normal governance while secretly furthering the Demi-Lich's agenda. Another might command an entire Undead legion, coordinating military operations across a region. The binding of vampires to service requires methods different from those used on mindless undead. Vampires possess strong wills and their own ambitions, making simple necromantic control unreliable. This could imply that Acererak employs combinations of magical compulsions, leverage through possession of items tied to their existence, and carefully structured incentives. A vampire's coffin, or some object from their mortal life, might serve as leverage, ensuring obedience. Alternatively, he might offer rewards in the form of territory, access to victims, or arcane knowledge appealing to vampire desires. The most reliable bindings involve oaths and magical contracts, creating obligations the undead cannot violate without suffering consequences. Liches present unique challenges within any organizational hierarchy. These powerful undead possess magical abilities comparable to living archmages and fiercely guard their independence. Acererak rarely attempts to forcibly bind another lich to his service, as such efforts often result in destructive conflicts between entities of nearly equal power. Instead, he builds alliances based on mutual benefit and carefully maintained balance of power. A lich might agree to serve Acererak's interests in exchange for access to his vast libraries, protection from enemies, or assistance with their own projects. These alliances remain inherently unstable, as both parties constantly probe for weaknesses and opportunities to gain advantage. Death Knights fulfill roles as champions and personal guardians. These warriors were corrupted and transformed through dark pacts or necromantic rituals, retaining their combat skills from life while gaining undead resilience and connection to negative energy. Each Death Knight possesses the abilities developed through years of martial training, enhanced by supernatural power. They can command undead forces in their own right, making them ideal for leading military campaigns or defending key locations. The transformation of a skilled warrior into a Death Knight often involves elaborate rituals binding their soul to service. Some accounts suggest Acererak creates Death Knights from adventurers who challenged him and fell to the tomb's defenses, transforming would-be destroyers into instruments of his will. Mummies fulfill roles requiring both physical presence and magical capability. Unlike simple zombies, properly prepared mummies retain portions of original intelligence and can wield magic if they possessed such abilities in life. The mummification process itself creates multiple points of control through the elaborate rituals involved in preservation. Mummies make effective guardians for locations requiring defenders who can both fight directly and activate magical defenses. A mummy might guard a vault of forbidden knowledge, engaging intruders in physical combat while simultaneously triggering wards and calling for reinforcements through command networks. The organization of these various undead types into cohesive units requires careful planning and clear hierarchies. Based on principles of effective military organization, we can infer that Acererak structures his forces into legions, each consisting of mixed undead types selected to complement each other's strengths and weaknesses. A typical legion might include several hundred skeletal warriors forming core infantry, supported by zombie shock troops that absorb enemy attacks. Whites serve as squad leaders, coordinating tactical movements. Wraiths operate as scouts and assassins. A vampire or death knight commands the entire legion, with direct access to Acererak's strategic guidance through the silent command network. The deployment of these legions across multiple territories and dimensions creates a network of control extending Acererak's influence far beyond the Tomb of Horrors. Sources confirm he maintains operations on multiple worlds, including Oerth, where the original tomb stands, and Abir Toril, where he executed the Soulmonger scheme. Each location garrisoned by undead forces appropriate to the environment. In shadow-touched realms, his legions consist primarily of incorporeal, undead thriving in darkness. On material planes, he distributes forces to maintain control over territories rich in corpses or magical resources. The methods of domination Acererak employs transcend simple necromantic control. His silent commands carry a quality making resistance nearly impossible for most undead. When you receive one of his directives, it arrives not as external instruction, but as internal imperative indistinguishable from your own will. This creates the illusion of choice while ensuring absolute obedience. An undead commander might believe they make strategic decisions based on battlefield conditions, never realizing every choice aligns perfectly with broader plans. This psychological control proves more effective than crude compulsion, as servants believing they act autonomously perform more creatively and adapt more effectively to unexpected situations. The integration of the command network operates through layers of redundancy. Primary commands flow directly from Acererak to his lieutenants, through negative energy connections established during their creation or binding. If this primary channel is disrupted, secondary protocols activate automatically. These backup systems include pre-programmed instructions executing under specific conditions, allowing undead to continue functioning even if cut off from direct communication. A legion suddenly isolated from the command network might default to defensive postures and patrol patterns, maintaining security while attempting to re-establish contact. The silent nature of Acererak's commands creates significant advantages in both operational security and psychological warfare. Enemies attempting to intercept messages find nothing to intercept. Spies attempting to infiltrate the command structure discover no meetings, no written orders, no verbal discussions. Commands simply appear in the minds of undead servants, leaving no external trace. This silence also terrorizes those who witness it. Living beings find something profoundly unsettling about watching undead forces coordinate complex maneuvers without apparent communication. The armies move with perfect synchronization, responding to threats and opportunities as if guided by a single mind, which in essence they are. The establishment of relay points throughout territories extends the range and reliability of command networks. Certain powerful undead or enchanted objects serve as amplifiers for will, receiving commands and retransmitting them to more distant servants. A vampire lord ruling a city might function as such a relay, maintaining constant connection, while overseeing thousands of lesser undead throughout the urban area. Magical obelisks erected at key locations can serve similar purposes, channeling negative energy and carrying commands across vast distances. These relay points create webs of control covering entire regions. The training and development of undead servants represents an ongoing process. While mindless undead cannot truly learn, intelligent undead acquire new skills and knowledge through experience. Acererak encourages this development, understanding that more capable servants prove more valuable. A wight surviving multiple battles gains tactical experience, making it a better commander. A vampire spending decades infiltrating a kingdom's nobility develops networks and influence, serving long-term plans. The Demi-Lich monitors servant growth, promoting those demonstrating exceptional ability and replacing those proving inadequate. The consequences of failure within this hierarchy depend on the nature and severity of mistakes. Mindless undead that fail simply get destroyed and replaced, possessing no value beyond immediate utility. Intelligent undead face more nuanced responses. A wight losing a battle due to overwhelming enemy force might receive another chance, while one failing through incompetence or cowardice faces destruction or demotion to lesser form. Vampires and other powerful undead who betray or fail catastrophically suffer fates specifically designed to exceed mere destruction. A Demi-Lich can torture undead consciousness indefinitely, creating experiences of suffering beyond anything physical pain could produce. These punishments serve as lessons to other servants. The creation of specialized undead for unique missions showcases adaptability. When situations require capabilities beyond what existing forces provide, Acererak designs new varieties specifically for the purpose. These custom creations might combine features from multiple undead types or incorporate entirely novel elements. A mission requiring underwater operations might lead to skeletal warriors animated specifically to function beneath waves, with enchantments allowing efficient movement through water. An assassination target protected by powerful wards might necessitate creating wraith variants with enhanced magical penetration. The coordination between different legions operating in the same region occurs seamlessly through command networks. When multiple forces need to work together, Acererak ensures each receives instructions, accounting for the other's movements and objectives. A legion laying siege to a fortress might coordinate with a wraith infiltration team and a vampire agent inside the walls. With all three elements moving in perfect synchronization, despite never directly communicating. This coordination capability gives his forces significant advantages over conventional armies relying on messengers, signals, or other interceptable communication. The logistics of maintaining undead armies differ fundamentally from supporting living troops. Skeletons require no food, water, or rest. They march indefinitely without exhaustion and stand guard for years without relief. This eliminates most supply chain challenges, limiting conventional military forces. However, undead armies have their own requirements. Damaged undead need repair or replacement. Magical enchantments, enhancing capabilities, require periodic renewal. Intelligent undead, particularly vampires, need access to living blood or other sustenance specific to their nature. Acererak maintains networks providing these necessities, ensuring forces remain combat effective across extended campaigns. The strategic depth becomes apparent when examining approaches to long-term planning. While living commanders think in terms of years or decades at most, the Demi-Lich designs strategies unfolding over centuries. He positions forces in seemingly meaningless locations, their purpose becoming clear generations later when political situations shift or ancient prophecies near fulfillment. He creates backup forces and hidden reserves remaining inactive for decades, waiting for specific circumstances, making them relevant. This patience, combined with ability to coordinate vast forces without speaking a word, makes him one of the most dangerous military minds in existence. The integration of living agents adds another layer of complexity. While relying primarily on undead servants, Acererak occasionally finds uses for living individuals. Cultists who worship death and seek to serve forces of undeath can provide services undead cannot. They move freely in living society, gathering information and preparing for undead operations. They perform rituals requiring living participants, or spill their own blood for necromantic purposes. Acererak controls these living servants through combinations of promises, threats, and magical compulsions, though he trusts them far less than his undead. Living beings retain free will and can betray their master if given sufficient motivation. The organization and methods through which a silent skull commands armies spanning dimensions demonstrate necromantic mastery refined over millennia. But Acererak's influence extends beyond mere military force. His schemes and machinations reach into realms of gods and demon lords, and his legacy continues shaping events across the multiverse. Section 5: Eternal Schemes, Legacy, and Ongoing Machinations. The influence of Acererak extends far beyond the confines of his infamous tomb. While lesser undead overlords concern themselves with local dominion or accumulation of arcane power within single planes, the Demi-Lich operates on a scale encompassing multiple worlds and dimensions. His consciousness, distributed across soul gems hidden throughout the multiverse, maintains awareness of events spanning from the bustling cities of Faerun to locations on Abir Toril and beyond. This multidimensional perspective grants him understanding that few entities, mortal or immortal, can match. He perceives patterns in events playing out over centuries, connections between seemingly unrelated occurrences, and opportunities others cannot conceive. You need to understand that Acererak's ambitions transcend simple conquest or power accumulation. The sources document schemes that many would consider impossible or incomprehensible. The destruction of entire populations features in his plans, not as ends in themselves, but as means to larger purposes. The manipulation of divine portfolios, the creation of new gods of death, and the reshaping of fundamental magical laws occupy his attention. These objectives require resources and influence on scales that necessitate interaction with the most powerful beings in existence. Gods, demon lords, and other entities of cosmic significance have all found themselves either allied with or opposing Acererak at various points throughout his existence. The relationship between Acererak and Orcus, demon lord of undeath, represents one of the most significant connections in his history. During his pursuit of lichdom, Acererak turned to the worship of Orcus, who offered him the ritual by which he could achieve transformation. Sources suggest he was using Orcus and his worshippers merely as means to an end, that his devotion was pragmatic rather than genuine. This interpretation gains support from what followed. Once he attained lichdom, Acererak ceased paying homage to Orcus entirely, lending credence to the notion that his worship had never been more than a transaction, a price paid for knowledge he required. Despite this betrayal, or perhaps because of it, Orcus was said to be pleased with Acererak's work, even as the Demi-Lich traveled the plains seeking new and horrific ways to slay innocents. The relationship between powerful liches and death gods remains complex and often contradictory. Miakul, who holds dominion over death in Faerun, maintains ambiguous stances toward powerful undead. Gods whose portfolios include death and undeath view entities like Acererak with mixtures of respect, wariness, and sometimes genuine hostility. Based on what we know about divine portfolios and the nature of undeath, we can infer that Acererak's mastery over necromancy and his role in sending countless souls to their final rest could serve certain death gods' interests. Yet his tendency to trap souls in gems, preventing them from reaching proper afterlife destinations, creates friction. This suggests relationships characterized by occasional cooperation and frequent conflict, with neither party trusting the other, but both recognizing mutual benefits in avoiding open warfare. The worship Acererak receives from certain cults complicates his status within broader cosmic hierarchies. While he possesses no divine spark and does not grant spells in the manner of true gods, his power and immortality inspire devotion from those who venerate death and undeath. Secret temples dedicated to Acererak exist in hidden places across numerous worlds. The Black Academy, a settlement of necromancers, was constructed around the hillside containing the Tomb of Horrors, its members worshipping the Demi-Lich and studying his methods. These worshippers provide networks of living agents who can act where undead would attract attention. They also serve as sources of intelligence and occasionally channel their life force to fuel elaborate schemes. The construction of multiple tombs throughout the multiverse extends the legacy of the original Tomb of Horrors. Sources confirm at least two major sites: the original tomb in the vast swamp of Oerth, and the Tomb of the Nine Gods in Chult on Abir Toril. Each serves similar functions while being tailored to specific locations and types of victims. The Tomb of the Nine Gods represents a particularly elaborate scheme, constructed approximately 100 years before the death curse began. Acererak had discovered the forbidden city of Amu in Chult, where priests were routinely killed in death traps to appease 9 trickster gods. Impressed by this practice, he killed all 9 gods, enslaved the Amuan people, and forced them to build a massive dungeon beneath the cliffs. Upon completion, he killed all the Amuans and buried them alongside their gods, ensuring no witnesses to the construction remained. The tomb of the 9 gods served as nursery and power source for one of Acererak's most ambitious schemes. At some point during his travels through the negative energy plane, he discovered an atropal, a stillborn godling that had been created and then abandoned by some evil deity. The atropal is a massive, fetus-like aberration, an undead creature representing what happens when gods attempt to create life and fail. Most beings encountering an atropal would flee or attempt to destroy it. Acererak saw opportunity. He relocated the atropal to the deepest depths of the tomb of the 9 gods and began nurturing it, intending to elevate this stillborn god to actual divinity. The execution of this scheme required an artifact of staggering power. Acererak recruited the services of the Sown Sisters, an infamous coven of night hags from the lower planes. These hags possessed expertise in crafting soul bags, containers that could trap and preserve souls indefinitely. Intrigued by the promise of nearly endless supply of souls to torment, the Sown Sisters agreed to help nurture the atropal to godhood and assisted Acererak in crafting the soulmonger. This necromantic artifact, placed within the tomb of the 9 gods, possessed capabilities that affected an entire world. It absorbed souls of all those who died on Abir-Toril, feeding them into the atropal. More insidiously, it diverted positive energy away from the rest of the world and drained the life from anyone who had previously been resurrected. The death curse, as this effect became known, began in the late 1480s Dale Reckoning and created a worldwide emergency. Anyone who had been brought back from death through resurrection magic found themselves rotting and dying, losing 1 maximum hit point each day while the curse persisted. Resurrection magic itself became increasingly difficult or impossible to perform. The soulmonger captured souls as beings died anywhere on Abir-Toril, preventing them from reaching any afterlife. Instead, these souls fed the atropal, nurturing the stillborn godling toward actual divinity. Acererak's motivations for this scheme remain subject to interpretation. Some accounts suggest he intended to unleash the newborn god of death upon Abir-Toril, to commit genocide on a planetary scale. Others theorize he sought to prove his mastery by creating a god demonstrating power that would rival or exceed divine entities. Still, others suggest that once the atropal achieved godhood, the newly emerged death god would ensure continuous and infinite supply of souls for Acererak to consume, eliminating his need to construct elaborate death traps. His exact reasoning may encompass elements of all these theories, or something entirely different. What remains clear is that the scope of the scheme affected millions and demonstrated capabilities operating at divine scales. The entrusting of the Atraples' care to the Sown sisters allowed Acererak to depart the tomb of the 9 gods, while maintaining distant observation of his death god's development. Before leaving, he recruited the Yuan-ti of Amu, led by Raz Enesai, to protect the entrance to the tomb. He promised to aid them in releasing their god Dendar, the night serpent, from her prison beneath Chult. Though whether he intended to honor this promise remains unclear. This recruitment of mortal agents to serve his purposes demonstrates his understanding that living servants prove useful for certain tasks, even as he views them as ultimately disposable tools. The scheme ultimately failed when groups of powerful adventurers infiltrated the tomb of the 9 gods and destroyed the Soulmonger. Yet even in defeat, Acererak benefited from the enterprise. He harvested countless souls during the curse's operation, tested new trap designs and guardian configurations in the tomb of the 9 gods, and gathered extensive data about the capabilities of that era's most powerful adventurers. From his perspective, schemes succeed even when their ultimate completion is prevented, as long as he gains knowledge, souls, and survives to pursue new projects. His phylactery remained intact in a private demoplane, hidden from even the gods, ensuring his continued existence despite the destruction of his physical manifestation. The involvement with ancient structures and fallen civilizations represents another pattern in his documented activities. He gravitates toward places where great powers once held sway, locations saturated with residual magic and littered with powerful artifacts. The ruins of Amu provided both resources and cover for operations. A tomb hidden within remains of dead civilization attracts less attention than one built in populated areas. And ambient magic of such places can be harnessed to power elaborate enchantments. Sources confirm he has claimed sites across multiple worlds, establishing strongholds in husks of fallen kingdoms and forgotten cities. The study of souls themselves occupies much of his ongoing research efforts. While he has mastered practical applications of soul manipulation, trapping consciousness in gems, and consuming life force for power, deeper questions continue to fascinate him. What is the fundamental nature of consciousness? Can souls be edited or modified, removing memories or altering personality traits? Is it possible to merge multiple souls into Gestalt entities with combined powers? Based on the sophistication of artifacts like the Soulmonger and his soul gem technology, we can infer that his research has progressed far beyond what most necromancers achieve. This knowledge makes him one of the foremost experts on metaphysics of consciousness and identity. The creation of simulacra allows Acererak to project presence across multiple locations. These magical duplicates, infused with fragments of consciousness, function as autonomous agents while remaining fundamentally loyal to overarching goals. One account describes a simulacrum that masqueraded as Acererak himself, manipulating undead and living cultists to lure adventurers to a location called the Sundered Tower in order to harvest their souls. This simulacrum operated for years and nearly completed an ascension to true divinity before heroes discovered the deception and destroyed it. When a simulacrum is destroyed, the consciousness fragment it carried returns to the main collective, bringing all knowledge and experiences gained during independent operation. The manipulation of temporal anomalies represents one of his subtler capabilities. While sources do not indicate he can freely travel through time like certain artifacts or deities, his understanding of temporal magic allows creation of pockets with altered time flow. This could imply that chambers might experience time at different rates than surrounding areas, allowing years of research while only days pass outside. Servants can be placed in temporal stasis, preserved until precise moments when they will be needed. These manipulations make his plans difficult to counter, as events appearing to proceed normally might suddenly accelerate or reveal themselves as having been set in motion decades or centuries earlier than anyone suspected. The ongoing plots maintained simultaneously number in the dozens, each progressing at its own pace. Some schemes are immediate, requiring active direction and adjustment. Others are long-term investments, plans that will not reach fruition for generations, but require occasional maintenance to remain viable. The Demi-Lich's distributed consciousness allows monitoring of all these operations without losing focus. This multitasking capability, combined with patience and willingness to invest centuries in single goals, makes him extraordinarily difficult to outmaneuver. By the time opponents recognize one scheme, others have already progressed beyond points where they can be stopped. The recruitment of adventurers to serve purposes, either knowingly or unknowingly, demonstrates cunning that operates across multiple levels. He has been known to plant false information, leading adventuring parties to locations where their actions serve his interests. They might believe they thwart evil cults, when in fact, their interference disrupts rival necromancers' operations. They might seek legendary artifacts, not realizing that retrieving them will trigger magical contingencies benefiting Acererak. In some cases, entire campaigns undertaken by heroic parties accomplish goals the Demi-Lich desired, but could not achieve himself due to magical barriers or political complications. The adventurers celebrate victories, never knowing they served as unwitting pawns. The observation of heroes and their development provides valuable intelligence about current states of mortal capabilities. Each generation produces individuals of exceptional power, and sources indicate Acererak monitors these emerging threats carefully. Heroes showing particular promise might find themselves subtly tested through encounters that seem coincidental but are actually orchestrated. A dangerous monster attacking at a crucial moment, a cursed item discovered in ancient ruins, or a betrayal by a trusted ally might all be elements of evaluation processes. Those who survive and grow stronger become marked for future attention, while those who fall provide data points about limits of mortal achievement in their era. The legacy of fear surrounding his name serves purposes as effectively as any army. The mere rumor that Acererak has taken interest in a region can cause mass exodus, abandonment of settlements, and collapse of local governance. This terror makes populations easier to manipulate and provides opportunities for agents to operate without interference. Cultists claiming to speak for Acererak can extract resources and obedience from frightened communities, even if he has no actual involvement. This weaponization of reputation demonstrates another level of strategic thinking. He needs not appear personally to achieve certain objectives, when his legend accomplishes the same result at no cost. The ultimate goals driving endless scheming remain subjects of speculation, even among entities that have interacted with him for centuries. One account from Return to the Tomb of Horrors describes him as near completion of a multi-thousand-year project to achieve godhood, powered by souls consumed over years. Though this may represent only one of many parallel ambitions, some theorize he seeks true divinity, attempting to ascend beyond Demi-Lich to become a god of death and undeath. Others suggest he pursues complete understanding of negative energy and the end of reality itself, working toward futures where existence ends and only void remains. Still others believe he has no ultimate goal beyond endless pursuit of knowledge and power, that the journey itself justifies existence rather than any final destination. The truth may encompass elements of all these theories, or something entirely different. Acererak shares his deepest motivations with no one, maintaining secrecy as another form of defense. The endurance across ages that have seen gods rise and fall, empires flourish and crumble, and entire races emerge and go extinct speaks to fundamental success of his transformation. The Demi-Lich form has granted immortality, approaching true permanence. Barring coordinated effort by multiple entities of godlike power, focused specifically on finding and destroying every fragment of his distributed consciousness simultaneously. Acererak will continue to exist indefinitely. He has survived for millennia already, and shows every sign of persisting for millennia more. This longevity transforms him from a threat requiring immediate action into an eternal adversary, a constant presence in the multiverse that must be accounted for in any long-term planning. The influence on necromantic development across multiple worlds represents an often overlooked aspect of legacy. His innovations in undead creation, soul manipulation, and construction of death traps have been studied and replicated by countless lesser necromancers. Techniques he pioneered spread through forbidden texts and whispered teachings, advancing the state of necromantic art even among those who have never heard his name. Every lich studying transformation processes builds upon research he conducted. Every death trap designer borrows principles he established. His intellectual legacy extends far beyond personal actions. The silence that defines his command, that allows coordination of vast forces without uttering a single word, represents perfection of control through will alone. Every skeleton marching in his armies, every wight commanding a garrison, every vampire ruling a city in his name receives instructions through this silent network. The lack of speech of any conventional communication creates an organization operating with perfect efficiency, precisely because it needs no deliberation, no debate, no discussion. His will becomes the will of servants, and in that unity of purpose lies power that conventional armies cannot match. The legions move as one mind, distributed across countless bodies, a force combining individual initiative with collective coordination. The Tomb of Horrors stands as his most famous monument, but it represents only a fraction of true power and reach. Acererak endures, eternal and terrible, a reminder that some ambitions achieve their goals, and that death itself can be conquered by those willing to sacrifice everything mortal for the possibility of eternity. The Demi-Lich, who began as a half-demon, wizard obsessed with immortality, has become a force shaping events across multiple worlds and dimensions. His schemes continue unfolding across centuries, each failure teaching lessons that inform future successes, each victory adding to already formidable capabilities. Thank you for joining me on this journey into the silence that commands legions.